What if the person you just humiliated in public turned out to be the one person who could decide your entire future? In the glittering lobby of a billion-dollar tech tower, a proud woman mocked and even kicked an elderly cleaner. But what she didn't know was that this poor janitor was no ordinary worker. She was the billionaire CEO's mother, disguised to test her son's bride-to-be. And what happened next would shake not just a company, but the very foundation of love, pride, and respect. Stay with us, because this isn't just a story, it's a mirror, and you might be surprised by what you see staring back. The morning sun stretched across the skyline, washing the glass walls of Cole Tech Tower in a golden glow. From a distance, the tower looked untouchable, a fortress of innovation and wealth. But inside, not everything was as flawless as the reflection on its polished windows. Evelyn Cole stood on the opposite sidewalk, holding a small duffel bag. To most, she looked like any ordinary older woman. Plain sneakers, simple clothes, and a quiet demeanor. No one would guess she was the mother of Evelyn Cole, the billionaire tech CEO who had transformed Cole Tech into a global giant. For years, Evelyn had lived humbly, proud of her son, but never dazzled by his wealth. She had raised him alone, surviving years of long shifts, cheap meals, and endless nights of worry. Her pride was never in the money he made, but in the man she hoped he would become. Yet recently, troubling whispers had reached her ears. Ethan's fiancée, Vanessa Cole, had a reputation: arrogant, sharp-tongued, unkind to anyone she believed beneath her. Ethan brushed it off as gossip, blinded by love. But Evelyn wasn't satisfied with second-hand stories. She had decided to see for herself who this woman truly was. That morning, she carried a green janitor's uniform neatly folded in her bag. A friend who managed Cole Tech's building had arranged a favor. Just one day in disguise, moving unnoticed through the hallways of her son's empire. To Evelyn, it was more than curiosity. It was a test. She wanted to know if Vanessa's heart was as polished as the life she showed Ethan, or if beneath the shine lay only cruelty. She crossed the street slowly, her sneakers squeaking against the pavement. As she approached the tower's marble entrance, she whispered to herself, "Respect is not shown when the cameras are on. It is shown when no one important is watching." Inside, the lobby gleamed like a cathedral of commerce. Marble floors stretched wide, glass chandeliers scattered light like diamonds, and employees in crisp suits hurried through security gates. Evelyn felt small but steady, pulling the janitor's shirt over her plain blouse, tying the headscarf to cover her gray hair. She rolled a mop bucket into place. To everyone else, she was invisible now, just another cleaner keeping the building spotless, exactly how she wanted it. Moments later, the sharp echo of high heels cut through the lobby. Heads turned instinctively. Evelyn didn't need to look up to know who it was. Vanessa Cole, walking like she owned the building. Her fitted navy suit hugged her figure, her sunglasses reflected the lights above, and her chin tilted just slightly upward as if the very air owed her space. Evelyn bent down, wringing out her rag, pretending to scrub a spot on the floor. But her eyes flickered upward for just a second, studying the woman who wanted to marry her son. And in that instant, she felt the weight of the test she had chosen. This was no longer just about her. It was about Ethan's future, about the kind of home he would live in, the kind of woman who would raise the children who carried their family name. And Evelyn knew that sometimes the most dangerous storms came not from outside,
but from the people you welcomed inside your walls. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. As Vanessa's heels clicked closer, Evelyn steadied her breathing. She reminded herself of the years she had carried baskets heavier than her body, of the nights she had gone hungry so Ethan could eat. She had faced worse than arrogance before. But this test was not about her endurance. It was about whether Vanessa Cole, future wife to her only son, possessed even a shred of humility. The bucket trembled slightly as Vanessa's shadow fell across the marble floor. Evelyn's heart tightened. The test had begun.
The marble floors of Coltech Tower glistened as if they had been polished just seconds ago. Evelyn wrung out her rag and crouched low, her knees aching against the hard tile. She kept her head bowed, her scarf shading her face. To everyone passing by, she was just another cleaner, one more piece of the invisible machinery that kept the tower spotless. The sound of heels grew sharper, louder, like the ticking of a clock counting down to something inevitable. Employees instinctively stepped aside. Conversations cut short, phones lowered. All eyes shifted toward the entrance as Vanessa Cole swept into the lobby. She didn't walk, she commanded the space. Her tailored navy suit was crisp, her lipstick a bold red slash of confidence, her perfume trailing like a banner of wealth. In one hand, she carried a sleek leather portfolio, in the other, her phone, pressed to her ear as she barked quick instructions. Cancel the vendor. They were 5 minutes late. I don't tolerate delays. Replace them with someone competent. Today, not tomorrow. Her voice was sharp, efficient, but cold. A junior staffer trailing behind scribbled frantically on a clipboard, nodding without daring to speak. Evelyn's hands moved slowly across the marble, wiping at a streak of soapy water. She had deliberately spilled a small amount earlier, testing whether Vanessa might notice. She didn't have to wait long. The sharp clack of heels halted just inches away. Evelyn could sense the pause, the shift in the air as Vanessa's gaze landed on her. "Excuse me," Vanessa said, her tone clipped. "Do you realize what you've done?" Evelyn looked up slowly, her eyes calm. "I'm sorry, madame. I'll clean it right away." A thin smile curved Vanessa's lips, but it wasn't kindness, it was disdain. She stepped forward, her designer navy heels inches from the rag. "Do you know how much these shoes cost? More than you'll make in 3 months. And now look, dirty water splashed all over them." Gasps rippled through the lobby. A few employees froze in place, their eyes darting between the janitor and the CEO's fiancé. The security guard near the door shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. Everyone knew Vanessa's reputation, ruthless, untouchable. Evelyn bowed her head again, wringing out the rag carefully. "It won't happen again. I'm sorry." Vanessa let out a sharp laugh, echoing against the marble walls. "Sorry doesn't clean incompetence." She bent down slightly, her sunglasses sliding lower on her nose as she stared into Evelyn's eyes. "You people need to understand your place. You clean, I lead. That's how this building works." Her words hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn didn't flinch. Her gaze remained steady, calm, almost unnerving. Years of hardship had taught her the strength of silence. But Vanessa mistook that silence for weakness. Her jaw tightened. With a swift movement, she shoved the mop bucket with her heel, sending soapy water spilling across the floor. The rag slipped from her hands as the bucket wobbled and clattered. Gasped louder now. A receptionist raised her phone slightly as if tempted to record, then quickly lowered it when Vanessa's eyes darted her way. Fear outweighed courage. "Next time," she hissed, "watch where you're going. This isn't a charity. If you can't handle a mop, maybe you should find another job." The words cut like a knife. Evelyn pressed her hand to her side, steadying herself, then bent down slowly, retrieving the rag without a word. For a long moment, silence filled the lobby. No one dared move. Vanessa flicked her sunglasses back into place and strode toward the elevators.
Each click of her shoes echoed like a drumbeat of arrogance. The steel doors shut behind her, sealing the tension in the air. Only then did the lobby breathe again. A few employees exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "She didn't have to do that." Another muttered back, "Careful, if she hears you, you're done." Evelyn stayed crouched, wiping the water in slow, steady strokes. There was no anger on her face, no humiliation she allowed them to see. Only dignity, quiet, unshaken dignity. But inside, her heart ached, not from the shove, but from the confirmation. Ethan had described Vanessa as brilliant, ambitious, dazzling. But what Evelyn had seen in those few minutes was not brilliance. It was cruelty dressed in designer shoes. She whispered silently to herself as she wrung the rag. If she treats a stranger this way, how will she treat my son when no one is watching? As she gathered the bucket and mop, a young intern approached timidly, glancing over his shoulder to make sure Vanessa was gone. "Ma'am," he whispered, "are you okay?" Evelyn offered a faint smile. "I'm fine, child, thank you." The intern hesitated, guilt flickering in his eyes, then hurried away before anyone noticed. Evelyn straightened, gripping the mop handle like a staff. She walked toward the service corridor, her steps slow but steady. The lobby returned to its routine, but the air remained heavy, as if the marble itself had absorbed the cruelty that had just unfolded. Inside her heart, Evelyn knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning.
Upstairs, the 30th floor of Coltech Tower hummed with the low tension of a place that never fully relaxed. Desks lined in perfect rows, glowing monitors, and a wall of glass that overlooked the city skyline. It was the kind of office built to impress, but one that also carried a constant undercurrent of fear. Vanessa Cole leaned back in her executive chair, legs crossed, her phone pressed against her ear. She laughed sharply, the sound cutting across the open office like glass scraping marble. "Can you believe it, Sophie? Some cleaner nearly ruined my morning, splashed water across my heels. I put her in her place." On the other end, Sophie Adams, Vanessa's closest friend and personal confidant, didn't laugh. She sat at her own desk, her voice quieter, hesitant. "Vanessa, sometimes you're too hard on people. Maybe she didn't mean it." Vanessa rolled her eyes, twirling a pen between her manicured fingers. "Don't be naive, Sophie. People respect strength, not weakness. If I don't keep them in line, they'll think they can walk all over me. That's not leadership. That's failure." Her tone carried a finality that ended the discussion. Sophie sighed softly into the receiver, but said nothing more. She had learned over the years that pushing Vanessa too hard meant risking the friendship entirely. Across the office, junior staff exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard enough to know better than to look directly at Vanessa. Instead, they bent lower over their keyboards, typing with forced urgency. Vanessa rose from her chair, her heels clicking across the floor as she made her way to the glass wall, admiring her reflection superimposed against the skyline. In her mind, she was untouchable, the future wife of Ethan Cole, soon to be queen of this tower. Her smile carried pride, not warmth. Meanwhile, in a modest two-bedroom home across town, Evelyn Cole sat at her kitchen table, a leather-bound diary open before her. The page from that morning was already filled with her neat, deliberate handwriting. "Vanessa shoved me in front of staff, called me incompetent, said people like me should find another job." Her hand lingered over the words. She closed her eyes and allowed memory to drift back, years ago when Ethan was still a boy, feverish and thin, lying under a patched quilt while she worked through the night stitching clothes. She had skipped meals to keep him fed, carried baskets heavier than her frame to pay his school fees. Through every struggle, she had taught him one thing: respect everyone, no matter their place. And now, the woman he planned to marry had failed that test spectacularly. Evelyn pressed her pen harder against the paper, whispering, "My son deserves better." Back at the tower,
Vanessa strutted into the open-plan office like a queen entering her court. A junior analyst handed her a report, hands trembling slightly. Vanessa flipped through the pages, spotted a typo, and slammed the document on his desk. "Unacceptable. Do you want to embarrass me in front of the board? Fix it now, or don't bother showing up tomorrow." The young man's face reddened as he muttered an apology. His colleagues kept their heads down, pretending not to see. Sophie, standing near the doorway, winced. She stepped forward cautiously. "Vanessa, maybe—" But Vanessa raised her hand, silencing her. "Sophie, please, don't start. Weakness is contagious. I won't let this office catch it." Sophie's lips pressed into a thin line. She had known Vanessa since college, back when her arrogance had been brushed off as confidence. But over time, that confidence had sharpened into cruelty, cutting deeper with every year. Watching her now, Sophie felt an unease she couldn't shake. That evening, Vanessa dined at a high-end restaurant, sipping wine while recounting the lobby incident again, this time louder for Sophie's reluctant ears. People at nearby tables glanced over, some frowning, others whispering. "You should have seen her face, like a beaten dog. These people exist to serve us. That's the truth." Sophie set her glass down, her voice low but firm. "Vanessa, you shouldn't say that out loud. Someone could overhear." Vanessa waved dismissively. "Let them. Ethan worships me. He buys my diamonds. He'll never believe gossip about me. I'm untouchable." Sophie looked down at her plate, appetite gone. She thought of Ethan, kind, respectful, blind in love. She thought of Evelyn, the quiet woman she had met only once at a charity event, whose warm handshake had felt worlds apart from Vanessa's cold grip. And for the first time, Sophie wondered if she had been complicit all along by staying silent. Later that night, Evelyn closed her diary and sat by her window, listening to the faint sound of children playing soccer in the street outside. Their laughter carried her back to Ethan's childhood, barefoot in the dust, chasing a ball with holes patched by tape. She had sacrificed everything to make sure he grew into a man with both strength and compassion. Now, as she thought of Vanessa's mocking words, Evelyn clenched her jaw. "I will not let pride destroy the boy I raised with blood and sweat." Her test wasn't over. She would watch. She would record. She would wait. And when the time came, Ethan would see the truth with his own eyes. The next morning, Cole Tech Tower buzzed with its usual rhythm. Keyboards clacking, printers whirring, phones ringing in clipped professional tones. Yet beneath the routine hum, something unspoken lingered. Conversations hushed when Vanessa's heels clicked past. Heads lowered a little faster. Smiles disappeared as quickly as they formed. It had started with a single video. A junior receptionist, trembling hands hidden behind the front desk, had pressed record on her phone during the lobby incident. She hadn't planned to. She hadn't even thought it through. But when Vanessa shoved the cleaner, something inside her whispered, "People need to see this." Now the clip lived in secret group chats, shared cautiously between trusted coworkers. 20 seconds long. No commentary, no editing, just Vanessa's sharp voice, the bucket clattering, Evelyn bent on the floor, and Ethan's mother, disguised as no one important, taking the humiliation with quiet dignity. By the elevators, 2 interns huddled close, earbuds plugged into a single phone. "Watch!" one whispered. On the tiny screen, Vanessa's voice snapped. "Next time, watch where you're going. This isn't a charity." The other intern's mouth fell open. She actually said that? Worse, she shoved her, right in front of everyone. They looked around nervously before tucking the phone away. The video wasn't supposed to exist. Officially, cameras in the lobby had malfunctioned that morning, an order Vanessa had given IT within minutes of stepping into her office. but the receptionist's shaky footage told the truth too clearly to be erased. Sophie Adams sat at her desk, staring at the same clip on her phone. She had replayed it at least 10 times, her stomach twisting tighter with each view. She had been there. She had seen it happen. She had even touched Ethan's sleeve, trying to warn him. But seeing it through the cold lens of a camera was different. There was no excuse, no softening, no way to spin the truth. Her thumb hovered over Ethan's contact on her phone. Should she send it? Tell him everything? Her heart pounded at the thought, but then she imagined Vanessa's wrath, the icy silence that would follow, the severed friendship of nearly a decade. She locked the screen and shoved the phone deep into her bag, guilt pressing down like a weight she couldn't lift. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat at her modest kitchen table again, her diary open. She had written in careful lines, "Vanessa shoved me in front of staff. No apology, only contempt." But now her page bore something new. A photograph slipped between the lines. One of the cleaners from Coltech had visited her that afternoon, nervously holding out a phone. "Ma'am, I thought you should have this." The video played, shaky but undeniable. Evelyn's lips pressed together, her eyes moist but steady. She whispered, "God does not sleep." She didn't show the clip to Ethan, not yet. Love could make even the wisest son blind. But she knew the truth was spreading faster than Vanessa realized, seeping into corners of the tower like smoke that no one could contain. Back at the office, Vanessa strode into the cafeteria at lunch, tray balanced high, as if it were a crown she carried. Conversations died mid-sentence, phones slipped into pockets, employees busied themselves with salads and sandwiches, avoiding her gaze. She dropped her tray opposite Sophie, smiling wide. "You should have seen Chen's face after yesterday's prep. He was impressed. Of course, I handled everything perfectly." Sophie forced a smile, her pulse quickening. The video burned like a secret in her pocket. Vanessa leaned closer, lowering her voice but not her arrogance. "That vendor yesterday, clumsy. I don't even know why they let people like that inside the building. Weakness doesn't belong in Coltech." Sophie's fork clattered against her plate. She glanced around the cafeteria, half expecting someone to stand up and shout the truth, but no one did. They just watched in silence, their expressions carefully blank. Inside, Sophie's chest tightened. She realized that silence was no longer neutrality, it was complicity. Down the hall in the copy room, 2 cleaners whispered over a phone, the video replaying between them. "She shoved her right there in front of Ethan," one murmured, "and Ethan told her to stop. She doesn't know the woman she shoved is—" The other cut him off with a glance at the door. "Careful, if anyone hears—" They tucked the phone away as footsteps echoed near, but their eyes betrayed the truth. They knew the storm was building, and when it broke, no one would escape dry. That evening, Ethan sat in his office, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass. He leaned back, tired but content. He thought of Vanessa, her ambition, her fire, her sharpness that he sometimes mistook for strength. He hadn't seen the video, not yet, but whispers had already reached him. An assistant hesitated longer than usual before leaving his office. A junior analyst avoided eye contact in the hall. Something was off, though he couldn't name it. He picked up his phone, thumb hovering over Mom. He wanted to call her, to hear her voice, but he set it down again, shaking his head. "Don't be paranoid," he told himself. "Vanessa is perfect. Everyone says so." Yet deep in his chest, a knot tightened, small but growing. And across the city, Evelyn closed her diary, pressing her palm against the cover as if to seal the words inside. The house was quiet, but her heart thundered. She whispered to the night, "The higher pride climbs, the harder the fall." She didn't know when the fall would come, only that it was already on its way.
The morning of the investor meeting dawned clear, but inside Coltech Tower, the air was heavy. Every surface gleamed, Marble floors polished to mirrors, glass walls wiped spotless, flower arrangements trimmed into perfect symmetry. The tower was dressed for judgment, and at the center of it all stood Vanessa Cole. She strutted through the lobby in a fitted navy suit, her heels clicking like a countdown. A clipboard was clutched in Sophie's hands as she trailed close behind, trying to keep up with Vanessa's rapid-fire instructions. Chairs, move them closer to the aisle. Glass, wipe it again. Water bottles, labels facing forward. I want perfection, nothing less. Her voice rang across the marble, sharp and relentless. Staff scrambled, muttering, "Yes, ma'am," as they rushed to adjust every detail. "Vanessa," Sophie ventured carefully, "it looks perfect already." "Maybe. Perfect is the minimum," Vanessa snapped, cutting her off. "If we fail, Ethan fails, and I don't allow failure." Her words landed heavy on the staff, who straightened nervously. Sophie pressed her lips together, her unease deepening. At 10:30, security officers wheeled in trays of refreshments, mini sandwiches, bottled water, steaming urns of coffee. Following close behind was a vendor in a green apron, balancing a tray with practiced ease. No one looked twice at her. It was Evelyn Cole, once again in disguise. Her hands trembled slightly under the weight of the tray, but her eyes were steady. She had chosen this day carefully, knowing the pressure would strip away Vanessa's polished veneer. Under stress, people revealed who they really were. "Set it here," Vanessa commanded, pointing to a table near the main walkway. Her tone was brisk, impatient. "Yes, ma'am," Evelyn replied, softly, lowering the tray onto the table. One paper cup wobbled but didn't fall. Sophie let out a quiet breath of relief. But Vanessa narrowed her eyes. "Be careful. I won't have clumsy mistakes embarrassing this company." She dipped her head in silence, continuing to arrange the cups. Her calmness irritated Vanessa further. "Faster," Vanessa barked. "We don't have all day." Evelyn's hands moved steadily, deliberately. "Speed causes mistakes," she said gently. The words were harmless, but something about them made Vanessa's jaw tighten. She leaned closer, her voice low and sharp. "What causes mistakes are people like you, people who don't belong here, acting like they matter." Sophie flinched, her hand twitching at her side. "Vanessa," she whispered urgently, "not now. People are watching." But Vanessa turned away, already barking new instructions at the staff. At 10:58, the tall glass doors opened. Mr. Chen, the investor's liaison, entered first, his sharp eyes scanning the lobby. A team of suited investors followed close behind. The room stiffened, every staff member suddenly aware of their posture, their breathing, the beads of sweat on their brows. Vanessa's professional smile appeared instantly, smooth and rehearsed. She stepped forward. "Welcome to Coletech. We are honored to host you today." Mr. Chen nodded curtly. "Our chairman will be down shortly. He likes to see the atmosphere on the ground." "Then he will see excellence," Vanessa promised, her voice honeyed. Behind her, Evelyn adjusted a stack of cups. One slipped from her grip, clattering against the marble with a sharp echo. The room froze. Vanessa spun around, her voice rising. "Are you blind? Do you want to embarrass us in front of investors?" "I'm sorry, ma'am," Evelyn murmured, kneeling to retrieve the cup. Vanessa shook her head, disgust etched into her face. "This is why people like you should stay in your lane." Sophie grabbed Vanessa's arm, whispering urgently, "Stop! They're watching!" But Vanessa jerked her arm free, hissing, "I want them to watch. Let them see the nonsense I deal with every day." The investors exchanged glances. Mr. Chen's expression was unreadable, but the silence he left hanging was heavier than any reprimand. At 11 o'clock sharp, the elevator chimed. The polished steel doors slid open, revealing two men, the chairman of Coletech, and beside him, tall and commanding in a navy suit, Ethan Cole himself. The staff straightened instantly, their nerves stretched tight. Vanessa's smile widened. "Darling, you're back early."
But Ethan wasn't smiling. His eyes swept the scene. A vendor kneeling on the floor, Sophie tense and pale, staff frozen mid-breath, Vanessa standing tall with her hand half raised. "Vanessa," he said slowly, his voice low and edged, "what's happening here?" Vanessa laughed too quickly. "Oh, nothing serious, just incompetence. I was handling it." Ethan's gaze lingered on the vendor. Something about her calmness unsettled him. He stepped closer. "Madam, are you all right?" "I am fine," answered Evelyn softly, keeping her head low. Vanessa's smile tightened. She moved closer to Ethan, lowering her voice just for him. "Don't waste time on her. We need to focus on the investors." But Ethan's eyes stayed on the vendor, suspicion flickering in his chest. Sophie, her voice trembling, leaned toward him. "Look carefully." Vanessa tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Darling, please, let's go upstairs. Everything is ready." Ethan's jaw hardened. His voice rang clear across the lobby. "Vanessa, don't touch staff again, ever." The words fell like a gavel striking wood. The lobby froze. Staff exchanged stunned glances. Sophie exhaled shakily, relief flickering across her face. Vanessa blinked. Wounded pride flashed in her eyes. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Ethan said firmly. For the first time, Vanessa faltered. Her smile cracked, then reassembled quickly. Too quickly. "So now, you're defending people who can't even carry a tray?" Ethan didn't answer. His gaze lingered on the vendor, her hand steady, her face calm. A strange unease stirred in his chest, though he didn't know yet why. The elevator chimed again, reminding them all that time was moving forward. Mr. Chen glanced at his watch. The chairman cleared his throat. "Shall we proceed?" Vanessa laughed brightly, too brightly. "Of course, everything is under control." She led the investors toward the boardroom, her voice smooth again. But Ethan's steps slowed, his eyes glancing back one last time at the vendor in the green apron. And as he turned away, Evelyn whispered silently to herself, "Soon he will see the truth."
The atrium of Coltech Tower had never been so full. Rows of employees sat shoulder to shoulder. Directors lined the front, and investors filled the reserved seats, their suits crisp, their eyes sharp. At the podium, Vanessa Cole stood tall, her navy suit flawless, her smile wide and rehearsed. Behind her, a massive screen glowed, waiting for the presentation to begin. She lifted her hands gracefully, palms open in welcome. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Coltech is not just a company, it is a vision of excellence." Polite applause followed. Cameras clicked. For a moment, Vanessa felt invincible again. Then, the lights dimmed. A 20-second video filled the screen. The image was shaky, filmed from waist height. A paper cup clattered onto marble. A woman in a green apron bent down. Vanessa's voice rang clear and sharp. "This is why people like you should stay in your lane." Then came the shove. The vendor stumbled, catching herself with one hand against the floor. Gasps echoed faintly from the recording itself, followed by Ethan's voice, firm and unmistakable. "Vanessa, don't touch staff again, ever." The video ended abruptly. The room went utterly still. Phones lowered, breaths caught. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to vanish. Vanessa's smile froze, cracked, and reshaped itself too quickly. She turned toward Sophie, eyes blazing. "Who put that there? Take it down!" Sophie didn't move. Her fingers clutched her notepad, knuckles white. Her voice trembled, but carried. "It's already down." A murmur rippled through the employees, low but undeniable. Mr. Chen cleared his throat, his face unreadable. "We care about how leaders act when pressure is high." Vanessa's eyes darted back to the investors, her voice smooth like silk over steel.
A staged moment. The vendor was careless. I was preventing a bigger mess during an investor welcome. That's what leaders do, protect the brand. But the murmur grew, subtle and dangerous. Rolling through the staff rose like a tide that could no longer be held back. From the back doors, a figure entered quietly. She wore the same green apron, her step steady, her headscarf neat. This time she carried no tray, only dignity. Evelyn Cole walked calmly to the open floor beside the podium. Vanessa's voice grew brittle. "Security, please remove her. This is a closed session." "Leave her," Ethan said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension. The entire room turned as one. Investors leaned forward. Employees held their breath. Sophie exhaled, her shoulders trembling with relief and fear. Evelyn lifted her chin, her voice soft but clear. "Good morning. My name is Evelyn." Vanessa laughed once high and sharp. "Evelyn what? Madam, you were clumsy yesterday and caused a scene. This is not the moment for—" "Evelyn Cole," she said gently. The words struck like thunder. Gasps snapped through the atrium. A director half rose from his chair. Mr. Chen's brows lifted fractionally. The chairman leaned forward, suddenly awake. Vanessa's face went pale, then flushed, then blank again. That can't." Ethan rose from his seat, moving slowly, step by step, until he stood 3 paces from the woman in the apron. His voice dropped to a whisper, meant for both of them. "Mama." Evelyn nodded once. The silence that followed was deafening. Whispers broke out across the room. Security guards exchanged uncertain looks. An intern pressed her hand over her mouth. The receptionist near the back wiped away sudden tears. Vanessa's mind raced. She turned, tried to smile, to spin. "We didn't know she was, if we had known." Evelyn's eyes were calm, unflinching. "That is the point. You didn't know. You saw an apron and decided the heart inside it was small." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Ethan looked between his mother and his fiancé, his chest tight as if the ground beneath him had shifted. "Vanessa," Ethan said, his voice controlled, "did you shove my mother?" Vanessa lifted her chin, pride reflexively rising to the surface. "I corrected a vendor who was about to embarrass this company in front of investors." "Answer the question." Her eyes flicked desperately toward Sophie. "Help me." Sophie's lips pressed thin. "Say you're sorry," she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. "For what?" Vanessa shot back too quickly. The entire room heard it. Evelyn untied her headscarf, folded it carefully, and placed it on the podium. Then she eased off the green apron and laid it neatly on top. The uniform looked small there, like a skin shed. She said steadily, "I wore this so I could see how you treat people when you think no one important is watching." She turned to the staff. "Many of you knew me only as a cleaner or a vendor. Some of you smiled, some of you looked away. I am not here to embarrass anyone. I am here to speak plainly." Facing Vanessa again, her eyes sharpened. "Leadership without kindness is a fire that burns the house it claims to protect." No one coughed. No chair scraped. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Ethan swallowed, his eyes glistening. "Mama." The room softened around that single word, memory flickering in the silence. Market stalls, sleepless nights, a boy promising to change his mother's life. Then Evelyn turned back to Vanessa, her voice firm. "You are not sorry you shoved a cleaner. You are sorry you shoved a mother." The words slammed like a door. A director whispered to the chairman. Mr. Chen tapped a note into his phone. "Culture, risk, material." Vanessa's voice wavered now, her mask slipping. "Ethan, don't let this ruin us. You know me. I fight for excellence. I can change. I will change." Sophie whispered under her breath, almost too quiet to hear. Then start now. But Vanessa didn't hear or refused to. Ethan's jaw tightened. He stepped back, the space between him and Vanessa stretching wider. The entire atrium seemed to lean forward, waiting. Evelyn lifted the apron from the podium and held it to her chest like a folded flag. Her voice softened. This is not about money. It is about your heart. Vanessa stood alone at the podium, her smile gone, her words gone. Behind her, the giant screen had gone black, as if to wait for the next truth to be written.
The boardroom was too quiet. Its glass walls reflected the weight of 100 unspoken thoughts. Inside, Ethan Cole stood stiffly by the window, the city skyline glittering behind him, while Vanessa remained at the center of the room, her hands trembling as she smoothed her skirt. "Ethan," she began, her voice softer than he had ever heard it, "I didn't mean to disrespect your mother. I didn't know it was her." He turned slowly, his jaw tight. "You didn't know." He repeated the words like they tasted bitter. "That's exactly the problem." Vanessa moved closer, desperation cracking through her polish. "I was under pressure. The investors were here. I was protecting the company, your company." His voice cut sharp. "Protecting my company? By shoving a woman in front of half the staff? By humiliating someone you thought was beneath you?" She flinched but straightened again, pride refusing to die. "I was keeping standards. You know how much I want us to succeed." Ethan stepped forward, his voice low but steady. "At what cost, Vanessa? My mother built me with nothing but respect for others, and you tried to tear her down because of an apron." She filled with tears. "Please, Ethan, don't throw away everything we've built. I love you. I can change. Just give me a chance." Outside, in the waiting area, Evelyn sat calmly, the green apron folded neatly on her lap. Her presence was like a verdict without words. Beside her, Sophie fidgeted, biting her lip. "Mrs. Cole," Sophie said hesitantly, "Vanessa isn't always like this. She can be good. Maybe she just lost control." Evelyn turned her steady gaze on the young woman, her voice gentle but unyielding. "My daughter, good is not how someone acts when the world is watching. Good is how they treat the ones no one sees." Sophie lowered her eyes, shame pricking her chest. She had been Vanessa's friend for years, excusing her cruelty as ambition, laughing off her barbs as jokes. But Evelyn's words stripped away the excuses, leaving only truth. Inside, Vanessa dropped to her knees. Her sobs filled the room, echoing against the glass. "Ethan, please don't leave me. You mean everything to me. I'll apologize to your mother, to the staff, to anyone you want. I'll do whatever it takes." Ethan closed his eyes. His heart pounded with the clash of two pictures, the Vanessa he had fallen for, beautiful, ambitious, dazzling, and the Vanessa before him now, broken, pleading, revealed. When he opened his eyes, his voice was heavy. "Vanessa, if my mother hadn't worn that apron, you wouldn't have apologized. You would still believe she was beneath you. Do you know how dangerous that is?" Her voice cracked, raw. "I was wrong. I see it now. Please, just one more chance." He shook his head slowly. Love without respect is poison, and respect cannot be forced by fear. The boardroom door opened quietly. Evelyn stepped inside, Sophie trailing behind. The space shrank with her presence. Vanessa crawled forward on her knees, clasping her hands together. "Mama, please forgive me. I was proud, I was foolish, but I can change. I swear I can change."
Evelyn studied her for a long moment, her eyes neither cruel nor indulgent, only steady, like stone weathered by storms. Finally, she spoke, her tone carrying the weight of years. A proud tree does not fall in one day. It leans, it cracks, it bends, but it resists until the storm uproots it. You want me to believe you will bend, but I have seen your roots. Vanessa sobbed harder. Please. Ethan's eyes glistened, but he held back, waiting for his mother's judgment. Sophie, her voice trembling, stepped forward. Mrs. Cole, maybe this is her storm. Maybe she can change if she loses what she values most. Evelyn's gaze flickered toward her, softening slightly. Perhaps, but change is not words spoken in fear. Change is proven in silence, in humility, in the little moments when no one claps for you. Then she turned to her son. Ethan, I cannot make this decision for you, but remember this. The woman you marry will raise the children who carry your name. Ask yourself, do you want them to learn pride or humility? The words struck harder than any command could have. Ethan's breath came shallow, his chest tight. He looked at Vanessa on her knees, her makeup streaked, her hands trembling. Then he looked at his mother, calm, unbroken, the woman who had carried him through hunger and hardship. The silence pressed against the walls until it felt alive. Everyone waited. Vanessa, Sophie, even Evelyn, though her eyes carried no demand, only truth. Ethan Cole stood caught between two worlds, the past that had raised him and the future that threatened to undo it. His decision was not yet spoken, but the weight of it was already carving itself into the glass walls of the boardroom.
The boardroom was suffocating. No one outside dared enter, and yet the tension within pressed against the glass walls as though it might shatter them. Ethan Cole stood near the long oak table, his shoulders tense, his hands clenched at his sides. On the floor before him, Vanessa knelt, mascara streaking her cheeks, her once perfect composure crumbling. Across the room, Evelyn Cole sat quietly, the folded green apron resting on her lap like a silent verdict. "Ethan," Vanessa whispered, her voice raw, "please don't throw me away. Everything we've built, our future, our plans, it doesn't have to end like this." He closed his eyes briefly, the words piercing deeper than he wanted them to. He remembered their first gala together, the way she dazzled the crowd. He remembered the late nights at the office when she matched his ambition stride for stride. But he also remembered the fear in the eyes of his staff when she entered a room. He remembered Sophie's quiet warnings, and he remembered, most of all, the calm, unwavering dignity of his mother on her knees in a janitor's uniform. He turned slowly, facing Evelyn. "Mama, what do you want me to do?" Evelyn's voice was soft, almost too soft for such a heavy moment. "I want nothing but peace in your home. Choose peace, my son, whatever that means to you." Her answer was not a command, not a demand, but it struck like a hammer all the same. Vanessa crawled forward, clasping her hands together. "Mrs. Cole, please. I was proud, I was foolish, but I swear I'll change. I'll apologize to every employee in this building. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." Evelyn's eyes stayed steady on her. Forgiveness without change is empty. Change is not proven in speeches, it is proven in silence, in how you treat those no one notices. I have seen how you act when you think no one important is watching. That is who you truly are. Vanessa sobbed harder, reaching toward Ethan. "Please, Ethan, I'll do anything." He stepped back, his chest rising and falling, his heart tearing in two. "Vanessa, if my mother hadn't worn that apron, you would never have apologized. You would still believe she was beneath you. That's not weakness, it's blindness, and blindness destroys."
His words trembled, but his eyes were firm. Outside the boardroom, whispers rippled through the waiting area. Investors exchanged wary looks. Junior staff huddled, some replaying the leaked video on their phones, the sound muffled but damning. Sophie sat silently, her hands folded tight in her lap, tears burning her eyes. Inside, Ethan looked at Vanessa one last time. The memory of her arrogance clashed violently with the image before him now, broken, begging. But deep in his gut, he knew the truth. Tears born of exposure were not the same as tears born of change. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "love without respect is poison, and respect cannot be built on fear." Her body shook with sobs. "Don't leave me. I can't live without you." Ethan's throat tightened. For a long moment he stood frozen, his hand twitching as though it wanted to reach for hers. But then he looked at his mother, the woman who had gone hungry so he could eat, who worn the apron not to humiliate, but to reveal the truth. And in her eyes he found the strength to step back. Silence filled the room. Evelyn rose slowly, placing the apron gently on the table as though laying down a flag after battle. She turned to her son, her voice calm. "The woman you choose will raise the children who carry your name. Ask yourself, will they learn pride or humility?" He swallowed hard, his decision carved in the air though he hadn't spoken it out loud. Vanessa reached for him again, but this time he didn't move. The distance between them stretched wider than the room itself. When Ethan finally opened the door, the world outside seemed to exhale. Dozens of eyes snapped toward him, waiting for an answer that hadn't yet been spoken. Evelyn followed quietly, her dignity intact, Sophie at her side with trembling relief. Vanessa remained inside, alone at the boardroom table. The once bright screen behind her stayed black, an empty canvas that refused to carry her image any longer. Her sobs echoed faintly against the glass, muffled by the heavy hush of a company waiting to see what would happen next. That night, in her modest home, Evelyn set her diary on the table. She wrote her final entry for the day. Vanessa begged. Ethan stood silent, but his eyes had already chosen. Pride falls hardest when it believes itself untouchable. She closed the book gently, pressing her palm against the cover. Outside, children's laughter floated in from the street, carrying her back to the days when Ethan had been one of them, barefoot, hungry, but full of promise. And though her son's heart still wrestled with love and loss, Evelyn knew the truth was now inescapable. Ethan had seen, and once seen, it could never be unseen.